You're listening to Monday Matters, a Principal Matters podcast production.
Hi, Principal Matters listeners. This is Will Parker back with my co-host, Dr. Jen Schwanke, for a Monday Matters. Jen, it's almost Thanksgiving. Like this episode will be coming out middle of November. And recently, in one of your Principal Problems newsletters, you talked about less is more. And I wanted to bring that conversation to listeners this week as we step into a week where I know leaders are. We've said it so much. Like, if I'm going to ask you to do something new, what am I going to be willing to ask you not to do right. that? And we say that, but when I'm coaching leaders and I ask that strategic question, if you're going to say yes to this, what are you going to say no to? Mm-hmm. Almost every single time they'll pause and go, I don't know how to answer that question.
Right.
And I struggle with that too. So that's why I wanted to ask you to just take us down this thought process for a little bit.
Right. Well, I think that my mind always swirls when I think about how we can let go of things. And I remember a few years back, we were way over assessing kids. We were giving, I swear, some sort of an assessment every few weeks. And so we sat down as a team and we're like, okay, what can we get rid of? And so from the left corner of the room, somebody said, well, it can't be this test because it is required by the state. And somebody else said, well, we can't get rid of this test because it's actually helpful to our teachers. And we can't get rid of this assessment because our EL learners need it. It went on and on and on. And so everybody said, okay, we can't get rid of anything. And the meeting was over. And I felt like the kid in the window saying, no, we didn't get rid of anything. So it took another, 6 or 8 months to really kind of break down all the can't, and get to something that we could bring some sustainable change. So I think about this a lot. I remember a time I was, and I did write about this in the newsletter, but a teacher with whom I had worked for many years, really solid teacher, not overly emotional, really stayed real even. And she, I found her crying in the back of the school one day. She'd gone to find her snowmen that she stored every year because she put on a play, and the play was very important, and the play had to go on, and parents cared and kids cared, and we do this holiday play, and she couldn't find the snowmen, and it led to this breakdown. And I remember thinking, well, you don't have to do the play. If it's so much that it makes you feel this bad, you don't have to do the play. And she was like, well, I have to do the play. That's what I do. Another real life example, and then I swear I'll stop yapping, is I was once engaged to a man and I didn't want to marry him. And my sister said, well, you don't have to. And I was like, of course I do. And she said, you really don't. And so that I tell those stories because I think the very first step to trying to do less is to honestly answer the question, do you have to? That's the number one.
Oh, Jen, I did not know that story. I'm just laughing so hard because I imagine how much Jay loves that story.
So he does.
Yeah. So I'm where's my brain going to go? You derailed it with that story.
I threw you with the, you don't
and
have
that doesn't
to get
happen
married.
very often. When I think about, there's this reflective tool that I use, and I've been using it some in the training I've been doing on my book, Whose Permission Are You Waiting For? And it's called a happiness box. I call it the Doing Inventory by Sam Horn, and it was from a book she wrote. And there's 4 quadrants, and those quadrants include, what are things that I'm doing that I want to be? There's a second quadrant. What are things that I'm doing that I don't want to be? The third quadrant is, what are things that I want to be doing but I'm not? And then the fourth quadrant is, what are things that I'm not doing and I'm glad I'm not doing them anymore? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at those 4 quadrants and you write down responses to those, there's always a tension between that second and the third. Mm-hmm. Because the second of what do I want to be doing but I'm not, and the third of what do I don't want to be doing but I am, I'm just going to say this first as a directive. You will almost never find the opportunity to do the next thing that you want unless you're willing to sacrifice something else that you're currently doing, because it's mathematically impossible to keep adding on and adding on and adding on and eventually be able to carry the load. And that's what you're telling in that story of that teacher And that's what we're telling in the story of so many of our own history, and so many of the people that are listening to us today. And so I know it sounds weird to say what your sister said to you, which is no, you don't.
Right.
But maybe we need to start there with
Right.
the permission to imagine what it would look like if you don't
That's right.
do one of those things. So, other thoughts before I ask my next question to you?
Well, and when I think about your quadrants and I think about any decision about simplification, I think about the return on investment, right? Everything that we do allocates our time and energy, whether it's instruction or fun, family, personal work, whatever. And so in a school environment, principals, we have to analyze the return on investment for all of it. When we're stretched too thin, or our teachers are stretched too thin, we're slicing our pie into smaller and smaller slivers, and ultimately, instruction suffers. And how that looks, whether your teachers are overwhelmed, whether you're overwhelmed, instruction suffers along with it everything else. And so there's kind of a flawed math in education. Our math is often one-sided, right? We only add. That's the math problem. But when we add new initiatives, resources, training to fix problems, those kind of things, the more powerful math question here is, might this problem be solved by making it simpler or subtracting? Let's subtract for once. That's the better math.
Oh, see, that's so good. So I'm always challenged through this conversation, Jen, and I want this tension to be helpful for anyone that's listening too, because there are some things you can't control,
Right. That's
and
right.
there are some things you can. I'm just having this flashback to a math teacher I used to have that would keep a tally in his room of every interruption of that would happen,
I remember
and
that
it,
guy.
yeah, and so I remember stepping in his classroom and looking at that, and he was kind of embarrassed that I saw it, but I thought it was hilarious because it's just so true that
Right.
so much of your instructional time gets sucked away by other things, the fire drill, the yearbook photos, the next assessment for the formatives, the survey that you've been given by someone else other than your own school to do that you're required to do. All these things eat into instructional time. But I just want to look in the mirror because as leaders, the question is, what of those things can I control? And what of those things can I not? So I'll give you an example. There were many times where, as a principal, I could be asked to give a survey, or maybe a vendor has offered us a free something if we'll also have the teachers participate in fill in the blank. And many times I would have to evaluate that in terms of this would be a nice resource for my teachers, but is this yes worth it? Or should this be a no so that
Hmm.
I'm not creating another layer of more on teachers that already have too many layers? And so those are hard judgment calls, Jen. But I think as
Right.
leaders, sometimes not only do we play the buffer for a lot of the pain that comes toward our schools, and
Hmm.
leaders, you're managing so much every single day. Kudos to you for the way that you're the buffer and protectors for your schools. But sometimes you're also the buffers for that first no. And so embrace that strength when you have it. When you don't have it, because that's outside of your control, then sometimes just acknowledging it is helpful, Jen. But what other thoughts do you have for leaders who really want to just grapple with this? How do we do less?
Right. Well, it's a frustrating truth that, we do have all these genuine pressures. We're also doing massive amounts of things we don't need to be doing. And so I think the gold mine here is when we look at things that we're doing just because we've always done it. I think about a teacher I knew once who was very proud of the fact that she took 5 full days in her middle school classroom to set norms. 5 days. She probably could have done it in about 20 minutes. And so to me, a good analogy is peeling an orange, right? You don't throw away the whole orange, but you peel away that rind, the tough part, the bitter part, the unnecessary bulk, and you get to the meat of it. That's where the nutrition is, right? That's where the benefit is. So for example, one really high quality essay per quarter is better than grading low quality essays every single week. And it's not about eliminating important things, and it's not about eliminating fun, back to the snowman
Mm-hmm.
analogy. It's about eliminating the stress around the fun. So if you're miserable creating a fun activity, it's not fun. And the same goes for data. If you're collecting data from an assessment that you never use, then you don't need the data. So, there's a big payoff here. When you thoughtfully cut things, or you simplify things, the result really is better than ever. And often nobody even notices what you cut.
Well, it's painful to do an audit of all of the things that you do. It is
Right.
painful. It is painful. But I think we've all been in those conversations, Jen, where we've been on the team, we've sat through the day of auditing all of our stuff, and then we can't figure out what to take away.
Right.
And I just want to encourage leaders to, first of all, not be afraid to have the clarity on what that looks like for your school. But then second, to also imagine the courage that it would take if you were to start trying to eliminate things. I don't want anybody that listens to this today to think, you know what, I'm just going to go through here and just start taking things off the calendar, because you also don't want the disaster of not leaning into the other
That's
people within your building so that you understand what is meaningful and what's not for them.
That's
And
right.
so this is not a conversation to just encourage people to go out there and start slashing things.
Right. Yes.
going
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I do want to just encourage people to do what you and I often encourage folks to do, Jen, which is invite the conversations. Because I can remember specifically during COVID talking to a lot of leaders that were like, you know what, this is the first time in 25 years we haven't done X, and I don't think anybody really missed it.
Right.
Like that maybe that's something we don't have to do when we come back to school. And so there may be some things like that on those lists. Any final thoughts, Jen, as we wrap up?
No, but I think it's hilarious how you started to whisper. We don't have to, like, it's a big secret. People are scared to cut things. It's just our instinct to be like, maybe we don't need to talk about this. So,
We do.
but yes, I'll tell people where to find me.
Okay.
Find me at jenschwanke.com. Subscribe there to my newsletter, Principal Problems with Dr. Jen. And Will, where can they find you?
They can find me at williamdparker.com. And Jen, this Monday Matters is coming close to the end of the year, and I'm already thinking ahead, because when we get to next semester, like February, this podcast is going to hit like its 10th year. Can you believe that? Yeah. So I'm already thinking ahead. And so usually, we're also not far away from the 500th episode. But
Yeah.
I think I might actually target that February date as kind of an anniversary edition. So if you're listening to this and you find any value in the conversations that you get to have with Jen and me each week, I'd love to hear from you. If you want to send me or Jen an email, and you can send me an email at will@williamdparker.com or jen@jenschwanke.com.
Yep.
It doesn't take long to open up your phone and find the voice memo on there and just send a quick little, hey, this is something that I've benefited from your show. We'd love to be able to include that in an anniversary edition of some of our upcoming shows. So that's my quick shout out, Jen.
Great. Thanks, everybody, for coming and listening. And you better stick around for 500, people. That's what we have to say. Stick around.
Stick around. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Principal Matters, the School Leaders Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, would you take a moment and like, share, subscribe, or leave us a review? In fact, if you share it out with a friend, even more people can become a part of these conversations. Sign up for our newsletter at williamdparker.com for even more free resources. And don't forget to check out our website to learn more about our books, professional development offerings, Grow Academies, masterminds, executive coaching, and keynote presentations. Wow, let's keep learning together. And thank you for doing what matters.
Monday Matters.